add mid-century modern features to a house that was built to be mid-century traditional. By the way, the same tips apply to a house that's lost its mid-century charm somewhere along the way in a bad remodel of the past. Mid-century traditional. It's got faux vintage built-ins, dark woodwork, separated interior rooms, and has always had fake shutters on the front. Here's the fun thing about houses built in the 50s and 60s. They all share the same fundamental design DNA, similar structures, similar concept. Now, I can't turn a brick ranch into a post and beam house, but I can and do help clients open up floor plans and add MCM pizzazz, even if it was never there in the first place. One way or another, few mid-century era houses actually feel right when they have too many traditionalist details. They don't make good Victorians or colonials or craftsmen. That's not what they are. So if you're planning a remodel today, you want to make sure to trend-proof it by building in some amount of modern mid-century features to the house with every design decision you make. The story of this house is that it recently changed hands from its longtime single owner to a new couple. Very excited about its location on the waterfront facing out to a Florida bay, but less than thrilled with its dated mid-century traditional interior. They are a couple of extroverts with a couple of extroverted, almost ready to launch teens who both want their own spaces to get away in their bedrooms, but also to spend most of their time in the social areas of the house. They're coming from a house with a double island kitchen where everybody hangs out, and they want their new space to feel just as connected as the old one. They came to me as a mid-century expert and also as a design therapist. Since he's in the construction industry, he knows what he can do and can visualize it easily, but she doesn't speak the same language. They both wanted an arbiter to make sure her voice was heard and an illustrator to make sure they were visualizing the same things at the same time. I'm happy to wear both of those hats, as well as to help someone who's familiar with general construction and everything that's possible in his area, but not as familiar with mid-century design details and trends. One way or another, this house needed a new lease on life. The interior spaces had a very traditional, a pre-mid-century relationship to each other. There was a kitchen with generous square footage, but a sort of classic cut-off U-shape. Only 2 windows cut off from the bay view, and next to but not connected to a breakfast room that seemed to be the sort of service or private family areas of the house, and then a formal dining room, living room, and sitting room that felt like places no one ever really wanted to hang out. So scheme 1 opens up the kitchen immediately to the living area and views beyond. It's got an L of engaged wall cabinets and a big, generous central island. By keeping that island clear, the sink and the cooktop are against the walls, that can be a multitasking space. It's perfect for prepping, for pots, for eating, but it can also moonlight as an office space or a workspace or a project area. The adjacent mudroom has its own project island, with storage and workspace for crafting and to be a home office space for her. Everything about this space pulls you back towards the living area where the ceiling pops up, where there are 2 skylights to pull you back, and where we've opened up what had been picture windows into sliding glass doors with the same footprint that pull you out towards the bay view beyond. This kitchen is a combination of modern and traditional. It's got modern slab-style cabinets, but they're arranged with base cabinets and uppers, plenty of work area around that generous island. At the back of the house, we're really playing off what was already there, so we've taken the language of the vintage wrought iron railing and assumed that a local metalworker can match and extend it to wrap around the new decked space. By the way, this double-height space had once been a boat carport? A sailboat carport. A boat port? I don't even know. But since no one was planning to house a boat there anymore, we could use this as additional wraparound deck space. Scheme 2 takes a different approach. Here we've got a tiny redirect mudroom entry that takes you into the kitchen beyond. Again, space is not a problem here. We've got room for a pair of side-by-side islands. One more of a workspace, one is more of a hangout space. But imagine the personalized pizza parties you can throw here. In this case, we're using the language of the same kind of pendant light in different scales to connect the dining room beyond back to the kitchen and the island spaces to each other and to the sink and to the cabinets that face the walls. In this cross view, we're actually cheating the structure a little bit. We couldn't get away with fully opening the ceiling from the kitchen dining room wall all the way to the back bay wall because we needed to preserve a beam. So we hid it in a drop ceiling trellis area over the dining table that both defines and encloses that space while letting the upper ceiling lead you forward into the living room beyond. This design is also more connected between the dining room and the front door entry beyond it. Again, we're hiding a little bit of necessary structure, a few columns we couldn't get rid of, in a series of columns that start to act more like a screen wall. So you don't think about them as structure. They're working to define the space, but they're still holding up the ceiling. We've replaced the original railings with a more transparent safety rail that creates as little separation as possible between the back living areas and the bay view beyond. Scheme 3 actually defines the kitchen and mudroom entry as more of their own space. They aren't cut off from the spaces beyond, but they have their own distinct vibe. Note that sweet little built-in bench underneath the expanded window in the entry area. Here, putting a range into the island defines it as part of the working kitchen. In this design, we've kept upper cabinets almost entirely off the exterior walls. Now again, this is not a house that feels snug, but it's a nice trick to make a space feel even more open. Anything that's happening above counter height at sort of elbow room level is going to start to bring the walls inwards. So keeping everything off the walls makes this feel like the most generous and open plan kitchen of all of them. In the long view, you can see that we've actually moved the dining area all the way back towards the bay view to create a pleasant little seating area closer to the kitchen, but protected from it by that screen wall. The coffered ceiling over the sitting area conceals necessary structure. Remember that column and beam we couldn't get rid of? It's still there. Outside, as we connect to the bay, I'm using a strategy I often employ when I want to make sure that a second level deck doesn't feel too much like it's just floating on spindly legs and it connects down to the ground below. By wrapping the space below it in a screen slat wall, we're able to get a storage area adjacent to the pool and make it feel more solidly connected to the brick mass of the house. Okay, let's talk about the bedroom, the owner's suite specifically. The owner's bedroom had pride of place, obviously, at the back of the house with its own bay view. We didn't want to move the walls around too much, but we had some variations on the theme to play with the storage structure and how to connect the sleeping area through a long corridor back to the main hallway of the house. Again, sometimes in a house that's big, our biggest challenge are circulation spaces and how different rooms connect. The simplest bedroom version was as they had requested one with a walk-in closet connected to the bathroom. This long straight hallway is closest to the original design as well. We had some fun bumping up the ceiling here and adding a built-in headboard and floating side tables, but there is more we can do here. In the second scheme, we lined the shared wall between the owner's suite and the next adjacent bedroom with a 2-foot deep line of full-height built-ins. This kind of walk-by closet, as opposed to a walk-in closet, is maximally efficient. It allows for this beautiful panel wall effect, and as a bonus in this case, it creates a sound privacy barrier between the two spaces. Check out all that wood paneling. The third scheme is a variation on that theme with a reoriented bed. Again, the long walk-by closet with a slightly different arrangement of spaces. Here, the sliding panels could conceal either hanging storage or shelves. The bathroom is pretty modern, but we keep it MCM adjacent with a few simple details of hardware, the right choice of woodwork, and a stack bond tile pattern laid horizontally like Roman brick that runs throughout the space. Both when you're trying to divide up a bigger space in a mid-century design, and also when you're trying to bring back mid-century modern details to a house that doesn't have enough of them, you're going to depend on the way you do your built-ins, the way you add in screen wall and other details, sometimes disguising structure as a design element, and particularly you're going to want to bring daylight in from the ceiling, or if possible, vary your ceiling height. In this case, all three schemes have a different arrangement of where we pop the ceiling up, determined by the roof structure of the house, which was a little complicated in this custom-built home, but there's nearly always something you can do to vary the ceiling height. When you're connecting two spaces together, and certainly when you're connecting 3 adjacent rooms in one line, you need to do something to vary the ceiling height, or at least the ceiling materiality, to define how those spaces are distinct from each other as well as connected. For every design move we made, we checked it against our defining purposes of the house, the social hosting core, and the connection out to the back bay beyond. Another challenge of bigger spaces is that sometimes it can feel like anything is possible. And for a certain budget, that's true. When you're trying to decide between too many possibilities, come back to your original driving underlying purpose. In this case, it was always to create the most comfortable social hosting space and always to connect the social spaces out to the bay view beyond. And so that gave us an easy way to determine what was a good idea and what was just something we could have done but wasn't really the right move. This project highlights 2 great features of the master plan process. The first one is that this began with a floor plan provided to us by the client, not the existing footprint, but what he thought might be a good way to go. And our scheme 1 very much plays with that theme, tweaking it and making a few suggestions along the way. But part of his initial worry, part of what brought him to us, was that he was not sure he wasn't overlooking some possibilities. So we were able to provide him with alternate options that he could either choose, which in some cases they both liked, or just see that there was something else to consider and rule it out to know that he was more going in the right direction with his own vision. The other really important part of the master plan process that came into play here was the collaborative element. This is particularly important when one partner in a couple has more design experience, more construction experience, or just louder, stronger opinions, but they both know that this is a team project, that both voices need to be heard. For them and for me, sitting down together, making sure I was hearing both of their lists of wishes, dreams, and desires, And baking those into every single one of our scheme options meant that they could be sure their voices were being heard and that they were hearing each other and seeing options that represented both of their priorities at every step. By the way, I don't mean this at all to say they were disagreeing with each other or unpleasant. Quite the opposite. The master plan process is a really proactive way to collaborate from start to finish in the design process. Particularly when you and your partner don't share the same style or sometimes don't share the same vision for your house, the earlier in your process you can get all that out and clear the air and start finding compromises, the better. The worst case scenario is for someone to kind of take the ball and run with it, and then the other partner to realize that it's not looking like what they meant it to and be unpleasantly surprised by that. When it's all done, ooh, that's bad. Or when construction is underway and a timeout has to be called. Products have been ordered and timelines have been set. At any point there, it's not a great idea to find out that you and your partner are not on the same page. But back in the beginning of the design process, there's plenty of room to say, here's what I wanted, and find a middle ground, or figure out who cares more about some issues and who cares more about others to be able to balance the project out that way. If you're curious about how the master plan process of collaborative thinking and creative alternatives could benefit you as you make plans for your house, learn all about it at midmod-midwest.com/masterplan. I'd love to talk to you about your house and to help you and your partner get on the same page with the best version of what's possible. Bringing in new mid-century details to a house that didn't have them, making the best use of spaces, and helping a 70-year-old house do what it had never done before, like connect out to its amazing views to a bay beyond. As I figure out which case studies to do next, I'd love to hear from you about what your specific mid-century house design challenges are. Odds are I have worked on a project that's similar to yours before, so comment below and let me know what are your most challenging layout issues or style issues or partner disagreements, and I'll look through my back catalog and find a project I can describe that might help you solve some of those problems based off a simple YouTube video. Or, like I say, reach out and let's talk directly about your house anytime you need.